Hello everyone, I'm Anna. Did you know that the popular Squid Game actually has a real-life prototype in South Korea? It's even more brutal. What's more astonishing is that the participants are all innocent ordinary people who have been abducted by the police. They are subjected to inhumane torture. Today, follow Anna to explore the horrifying stories of the Brothers Home Welfare Institute in South Korea. In 1982, in Busan, a 12-year-old Korean boy named Hong was abducted by a truck after school one day. It was already late in the day, and he was heading home when he was forcibly thrown into a truck. Inside the truck, there were many others like him who were inexplicably tied up. These children didn't know where they were. They just wanted to go home. But what awaited them was a hellish place. As they got off the truck, the guards beat these innocent children with clubs and herded them into a prison-like facility. The rooms had rows upon rows of bunk beds, accommodating around 100 people each. When people arrived here, their hair would be shaved off, they would be made to wear identical uniforms, and even their names would be taken away. They were given a number to use as their alias. Doesn't this sound a bit like Squid Game? However, this wasn't a place for bad people. It was a government-subsidized welfare institution called the Brothers Home Welfare Institute in Busan, South Korea. This welfare institute operated from 1975 to 1987 with the goal of preparing for the 1988 Olympics. The president at the time wanted to clear the streets of homeless people. The original plan was to provide them with shelter, food, clothing, and education, and then release them back into society after a year. On the surface, it seemed like a good place, but reality didn't turn out as promising. Less than 10% of the inhabitants were actual homeless people. There were street vendors, drunkards, and even children as young as a few years old and elderly individuals in their 60s and 70s. They were all forcibly detained in the Welfare Institute by the police. So, what kind of treatment did the people inside this facility receive? The first day they involved severe beatings, aimed at making them submit to the institution's discipline. Speaking of the institution system, it's similar to what we might call a reform to labor camp. From the moment they opened their eyes, they were subjected to abuse. Almost all the women were sexually assaulted, leaving an indelible mark on their lives. So, what did these abducted individuals do every day? The official intention was to reform them, educate them, and teach them skills. However, the reality was different. They were forced to work hard for long hours, getting up at 5 a.m. to start work after breakfast. Although they received 3 meals a day, the food was minimal and barely enough to satisfy hunger. Consequently, most of them were undernourished. If they didn't complete the assigned workload, they faced severe punishment. Some disabled individuals couldn't perform regular tasks, so they were confined to a room. But instead of receiving proper care, they were drugged and left lying there like zombies. This room was later referred to as the zombie room. Survivors' accounts revealed that to prevent anyone from escaping, there were 13 guards and 13 guard dogs monitoring them 24/7. If anyone tried to escape, they were likely to be caught, beaten with clubs, and sometimes subjected to severe forms of torture like being locked in a water cell. Some were even beaten to death and buried on a hilltop in a makeshift graveyard. According to statistics, during the 12 years of the Welfare Institute's operation, 513 victims died. However, this is likely not the actual number, as many bodies were disposed of haphazardly, and some were even sold to nearby medical schools for dissection. As of August 2022, the death toll had risen to 657. With ongoing investigations, this number might increase further. You might wonder, with so many people disappearing without a trace, why didn't their families report to the authorities? Well, many families did report to the police, but the problem was that some of the individuals were taken by the police themselves. Faced with the missing relatives, the police brushed off their concerns. The reason behind this was the support of the Busan government. This was actually a crime committed jointly by the Busan Welfare Department, the municipal government, and the police. These officials embezzled government funds, randomly abducted people from the streets, and used them as free labor in the welfare institution to make extra money. The majority of those inside were innocent ordinary people who were stripped of their basic human rights. The Welfare Institute operated for about 12 years before it was finally shut down. In December 1986, prosecutor Kim noticed something strange while hunting with his colleagues during a break. He observed guards beating the laboring individuals with stakes. These people were then locked up in a barn-like place. Seeing this scene, he had a bad feeling and initiated an investigation. After 3 months of investigation, he uncovered more cases like this and even found children working on construction sites. He managed to track down the director of the Welfare Institute, Park In-gyun. Upon searching his office, they found a large box containing over 20 billion Korean won in cash. This money included embezzled government subsidies and income generated from the labor of ordinary people in the Welfare Institute. It had all gone into his pockets. Park In-gyun was summoned for questioning. At first, he remained tight-lipped and claimed he couldn't be investigated. Despite facing multiple charges, he was allowed to move around freely during this period. The Busan government also tried to cover up the incident, but it had already been exposed, and the media began to report on it extensively. Under mounting pressure, on June 23, 1987, the Busan District Court sentenced Park In-gyun to 15 years in prison and a fine of 680 million Korean won. However, this wasn't the final outcome. Behind Park In-gyun was the then president of South Korea, Chun Doo-hwan. After multiple appeals, his sentence was ultimately reduced to 2 years and 6 months, and all fines were waived. As for why his sentence was significantly reduced, it was due to the disappearance of much of the evidence of his actions, including assault, murder, and trading in bodies. The Brothers' Home Welfare Institute was completely dismantled, leaving no trace behind. This was likely the result of actions by the South Korean government. Ironically, even President Chun Doo-hwan said of Park In-gyun, "Thanks to Director Park, there are now more homeless people on the streets." Isn't that good? Even the president believed that this approach was fine. The society at the time was truly terrifying. After the brothers' home was closed, what happened to the people inside? It's reported that a total of 38,000 people became victims of this incident. These people not only received no compensation, but also reintegrating into society became a huge challenge. Many ended up in mental hospitals, and some even went missing after being released because they couldn't find their parents. Only a small portion managed to readjust to life. This incident was quickly forgotten. Recently, they have come forward once again to bring up this forgotten history of South Korea. However, the courts consider the matter to be in the past, and the mastermind behind it, Park In-gyun, passed away in 2016. What's even more ironic is that Park In-gyun only served 2 years in prison and lived the rest of his life in wealth, while those who suffer cruel treatment struggle to guarantee even the most basic needs of life. To this day, they continue to seek justice for their experiences as victims. That's all for this episode. Thank you for your ongoing support of Anna. If you like this, click the subscription link below the video. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.